David, we're going to have one presentation here, gentlemen right here from Russia. It's going to be 5 minutes, so they can come and see what they have, great products they have. They're here. Let me introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Sydney. Hi, I'm Vera. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Help Me Now. And thanks for inviting us today. We are definitely using the crowdfunding tools, and we find them being very useful. We are just raising our first round at the moment. We are on the angel list. We are on the equity net, of course. So let me share a little bit about our idea and the company. So as an entrepreneur, I travel a lot. And together with me, there is more than 1 billion people traveling every year. And each time when I need some help in a new city, the best experience I can ever get is when I can find a local person who shares same lifestyle, same interest with me, and who can give me an advice or provide me some service. So this is why we decided to create Help Me Now, an application where people who share same interests and lifestyle can connect right on the map to get or provide local services and advice. So right now, if you are in another city and you just need a local guy with a car to drive you around, or you just want to know where the best club is for tonight, you simply post your request straight on the map, get connected with local people, and get help. We already have our beta application that we are testing with our network community. We are getting really positive feedback and very interesting proposals on integration with other services. And it works very easily. People get reward points for their advice in our application. These reward points, they can then exchange to real discount coupons. And of course, they can get paid for their services. And we, as a company, take a fee from each transaction that is happening within our app. So we are going to launch in San Francisco in September. And San Francisco only has more than 130,000 visitors every day. So after that, we are going to spread to other cities in US, starting from New York, of course, and then going global. Our main focus is on the travelers, business travelers, tourists, on the newcomers, and of course students who are local, who would be happy to help to others, etc. So yeah, we're raising funding. Our first round is 300K, and we already got 100 out of that. And so the next round planned for December this year. We have, of course, a very great and dedicated team. We have 3 advisors, and we have 4 co-founders and 3 more developers in our team. And so we are the space for your wants and needs wherever you are. Thanks for your attention.
So Alessandro came in from Rome. He's the leading lawyer of Italy, currently working with Consob, the equivalent of the SEC. And when I need to find out what's going on in Italian, he's my resource. So I wrote a couple articles, especially on Forbes, disclosing when they came up with the crowdfunding law about a year ago. And he was very helpful in getting me the information and translating it when I came out with the article. Here's to you.
Thanks to you, David. I was not supposed to make a presentation, so I apologize for the quality of the slide. It's something that I recovered from the internet. So,
We want to have you to present while you're here.
Exactly.
All the way from Italy. We want to be there and come to your house.
With big pleasure. So, Italian law has just been implemented in last summer in June. Our regulation is based on a law and on a regulation issued by the Consob. The Consob is our Security and Exchange Commission, and it has regulatory power and supervision above the market. It can impose penalties and dictates the rules of the game. Platforms have to be registered with Consob, so they have to make an application, and the process of registration lasts more or less 60-90 days. They automate reputation and competence requirements, so as far as shareholders are concerned and management is concerned. And the investment is subject to the MiFID regulation. I explained yesterday. MiFID is a European community process in order to check out the proclivity to risk investment. Target company, for now, can be only companies involved with innovation. By the end of the year, the market will be opened, so any small, medium companies will be allowed to crowdfund in Italy. And what is most interesting, already from now, any foreign company can make crowdfunding in Italy, regardless of the nationality of the shareholder, of the management team, everything. And from next week, there will be a special startup visa process in order to give a visa to startup management and families in just 2 days if there is a startup coming to Italy for a crowdfunding. So for now, only high-tech innovation. By the end of the year, all the industry. What is very interesting is the cap that we can raise is up to 5 million per year per project. This is in euros, so it is more or less $7 million per project. Crowdfunding platforms are intermediaries substantially, but their exclusive purpose is to raise capital online. They cannot advertise. And depending on the kind of investment, there are 2 different regulations. While a big investment must be taken through the help of a broker-dealer, for small investment, they can be dealt by the platform themselves. Small investments are up to 500 euro or 1,000 euro per year, or for the company, 10 times this amount. But pay attention, this is not an investment limit. This is only the threshold below which the platform can take the money of the investor without the assistance of any broker-dealer. So broker-dealers are pretty much involved in the process. They can either run a platform themselves or partner with a crowdfunding platform. And they take care of the MiFID procedures, which is identification of the client, anti-laundering rules, so source of wealth, source of money, etc., and the check about the proclivity to risk investment. Then broker-dealers are also allowed to give suggestions, so to make consulting, while a simple crowdfunding platform cannot make any consulting, just display the offers and take the request of investment. Investors are strongly protected. The legal framework offers a very, very robust protection, but there is no investment limit, so everybody is free to invest also millions through a crowdfunding platform. What is very important is that there is an investor education, so platforms are committed to offer investor education to anybody investing in them. And by self-attestation, investors have to confirm that they have fully understood the risks of investment in startups, in equity, and that their personal estate will not be compromised by the investment. And this is something that has been exactly copied by the UK law, which entered into force a few days ago. So there is no onus for the platform to check out, as you do here in the States, for the accredited investor, which is the position of the investor, if it's accredited or not. It's just a self-attestation made on the web. Then there is a wide set of withdrawal rights that allow the investor to withdraw and just to change his mind within 7 days from the investment and to have back his money without any particular risk or cost. I do not go in deep into it. It's too complicated maybe for your system. And another thing that is very, very important is that usually startups have shareholders agreement because they have investor inside. I'm afraid that often equity crowdfunding is put in relation to startups company, but startups company are not something in which investor could safely invest. So when we speak of startup company being crowdfunded, we speak of startup companies that already have a team, that already have been funded, that already have a stream of revenue. Well, in these cases, often there are shareholders' agreement with angel investors or venture capitalists. This shareholders' agreement must be communicated to the investors, otherwise the investor have a tag-along right or a withdrawal right when the founding shareholders exit from the company. Very quickly, so the takeaways are that we have 5 million per year. Any nationality is allowed to make crowdfunding in Italy. Platforms are all registered with Consob. There is no investment limit per person. Investment must be concluded through a broker-dealer, and the shares can be freely sold in any moment. While in the States, you have some time limits within which you cannot sell the share. And there is a very strong protection for the consumers. 5% of the equity, this is the last point, must be subscribed by a professional investor at the moment of the crowdfunding, but it can be sold after 5 minutes when the offer is finished. Thank you.
Molto bene. I want to, before we go to just quickly, I know you come all the way from Italy. Just one question. If any Americans to go invest, can stay there or can be a resident?
No, there is not. Well, it is not necessary, but I have to tell you that it is not clear if the SEC will be happy with American investors to go and invest.
What about Italians?
Well, Italians can be. Will be very happy.
No, we can come over there. Well, we're going to be in Tuscany and those beautiful places and your home.
What we were discussing also with the other lawyers is that probably the best way in order to make transnational crowdfunding investment is to make it on different platforms. On a platform in Italy, and a platform in the States, a platform in Canada, and so on.
And your website, and by the way, we have a CrowdFunding Beat in Italy, which is very proud. We work with Alessandro, and you have a website over there. What is it?
Yeah, it is Lerro.it.
And finally, we have two great sponsors from all the way from Italy and sponsored this. What's the name of them?
Yes, one is Obsidea, which is an equity platform that will start operation in September, and the other one is Social Start, which is a reward-based crowdfunding platform that is going to start in a couple of weeks. So they are here just to announce that they are.
And Occidel, and what's the website?
Obsidea is the website, obsidea.com, and Social Start is socialstart.com.
And thank you for being part of our family. I appreciate it. And Alessandro, and I hand it to David. And by the way, I want an announcement. We will have a lunch. So for after this panel, they're setting up the restaurant over there. So we do have some lunch. And great to have you. David, thank you.
I think we need you back. Alessandro, come and join us. Yeah, you get a second chance now. What I forgot to tell everybody yesterday, Sydney and I competed last year, April 5th, on the first year anniversary. I was doing 3 conferences at Thomson Reuters in Boston. He was doing on the West Coast. I lost, so I gave up on that. So I'm here to, take honor with the winner of the conferences. Yeah, so it was fun. So we were like competitors a year ago, and today, we're working closely together, and this is relaxing. I see a lot of faces that I've known for up to 3 years, new faces, and my company is, the investment we have is it's a finance media company focused on writing and educating people about investors and how to raise money. 50% of our events are actually for venture capital and family offices on a global basis. And about 20% are for private equity. And we do maybe 10-20% in crowdfunding, but I got known from writing about crowdfunding in the early days because there weren't that many people writing at that time. But today we're going to actually talk more about what's happening on an international basis, and we're actually going to start with Michael because he's going to run to the airport in literally 5 minutes. So, Michael, over to you.
Okay, I've been in the capital markets since 1977 when I graduated from college and joined Merrill Lynch. That's how long I've been in the markets. I've been an investment banker, an underwriter of IPOs on Wall Street in New York. And And based upon, I want to talk a little about Title III and why I'm so excited about it. And most people, what you read about Title III, they're poo-pooing it and all that stuff. But I think Title III is going to be enormously successful. And here's why. The first $100,000 that you can raise under Title III, there's really no requirements. So what's going to happen, I predict that angels are going to come in and put the first 100 in. And then what's going to happen is they're going to put the first 100 in to get ready to raise the next 400 or 500, which is the next level. And then it'll go to the next level, which is $1 million. So you can raise up to $1 million a year under Title III. So what's going to happen is promoters are going to come in, and they're going to basically put the money in the early stage round, which I call the angel $100,000 round. And it's going to move very quickly to, hey, I've got 100. What do I need to do to get the next 500? And what do I need to do to get the $1 million? And by the way, once you get all that done, you can then, in the next 12 months, you can wait 12 months, you can raise your next $1 million. So you could raise literally $1 million a year for the next 5 or 10 years under Title III as a startup. Now, not only that, once you raise the $1 million, you now could go into Title II 506C for the next round. So I see this Title III is just going to pump venture capital into the economy very, very fast. And it's going to be tremendously efficient. Now, the other thing that I think I'm excited about Title III is everybody talks about, well, who's going to put up all this money? I mean, all these people, the neophyte investors putting up the $10,000. I don't see it going that way. I see all the neophytes putting up $100. Okay, so if anybody's here been in the stock markets and been understanding the underwriting process and the liquidity process for a public company, what's the number one thing you want? Every public company, every penny stock, every illiquid stock, what do they want? They want shareholders. Okay, shareholders create liquidity. So what I see happening and where I'm moving and everything that I'm doing is to really teach entrepreneurs how to go out and get 10,000 people to put up $100 a piece. Because that's $1 million. So you could get 10,000 people to put up $100, and guess what? What's your risk? Is somebody going to sue you for $100? You've got 10,000 people putting up $100. Now, what happens by doing that? You now have a shareholder base, which you can go in and tap 5% of your shareholders for a Title II, 506C. So I really believe that. And I'm moving towards what can be done to help companies go out and get 10,000 people to put up $100. And that's where I think the whole market's going to wind up moving to, and that's really going to be a boom in the whole process.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay.
Now you going to take off?
Yeah. Does anybody have a question or two? I'll take a question. Yeah.
One of the things we see in the real estate arena is you can't stay at 100. And so what I mean by that, we're the largest developers of shopping centers in Texas. Our investors were granted the opportunity. In other words, you want in, you got an email, you got a letter, you got a phone call, and it wasn't like we're trying to sell you. You get the opportunity. It truly was a benefit because of the track record. And that was one thing I think Kevin addresses. When you're successful in this business in one niche, and you're making people repeatedly, you can't stay at $100. It is physically impossible because, as somebody already mentioned, you start now having the bigger elephants, or they turn into elephants themselves, and all of a sudden, can I write you a bigger check? So I think that's the one thing that, yeah, it's a place to start, but then there's a growth, right?
Right.
If you're sitting in that niche, you're not going from niche to niche to niche.
What I'm saying, I've been on Wall Street for years. I've seen companies, I've done underwritings, private placements, IPOs, the whole shooting match. The biggest thing that every company needs is a body of people that they can go to, or existing shareholders they can get more capital from. So this is the one benefit of Title III, that you could have 10,000, you could have 100,000 people put up $10 a piece. That's even better. Okay? And by the way, with the electronic certificates now, there's no cost. It used to be that was a prohibitive because, you issue that cost you $100 to issue a cert and send it to somebody. Now with electronic certs, so this is I'm saying, and I've been in the markets for 37 years. Every single company out there, how do I get more shareholders? So that's the game. That's what everybody should be shooting for, is because out of those shareholders, by the way, when you tap into those 10,000 shareholders and say, I want your help. Yeah, Mark?
So logistically, so one thing that is theoretical is how do you actually get a company to do the first one, to set the template, and maybe you've already got one in mind, but I think we need an example of a company that does it, goes through the full cycle, and everybody wins.
Well, I'm saying to you, that's my objective, that's my goal, and I've got obviously some things that I'm working on. That's where I'm moving, to get 10,000 people into a deal at $100 a piece. And that's going to break everything wide open. And so I guarantee you somebody else will do it if it's not me anyway, because anybody who has the experience I have and understands the problem is going to say, this is a gold mine. Because you had all these regulations. You couldn't, until the Jobs Act was passed, you had to file as a public company if you had over 500 shareholders. Now you don't have to file. You're not. There's no requirement you can have 100,000 people under Title III, and you're not required to file as a public company. So I think it's a huge advantage.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about what is happening internationally, and the topic of angels getting involved, like you were saying, Michael, before. Angels Den. I met the owner when I was at Parliament, October 31st. They were talking about crowdfunding being implemented. They have a new law in the UK suggesting you can do crowdfunding. They're a little upset that you can only do 10% of your portfolio allowed to be in crowdfunding today. And we just wrote an article on that. But Angels Den did something interesting. They claim to be one of the biggest non-American focused angel networks in the world, looking at 500 deals a day with 6,500 angels. And the founder is a Scottish gentleman who's in London and quite colorful. But what I did like what they did was they launched a crowdfunding for angels platform. They rebranded their platform about 5 months ago when I was there. And now what they're trying to do is saying, look, we will take the lead on an investment, and then we're going to go and crowdfund the balance. And that was interesting. And, I've been talking about this. I told you at Dills 3 years ago, when we had a conference, that angel networks should embrace this because it's a proof of concept, etc. And we're starting to see that in the UK now, where angel networks are actually putting it into their business plan and their execution of taking the lead and allowing crowdfunders to come in, because it's more freely over there. Interestingly enough, though, in the UK, even though you have a crowdfunding platform and you have a campaign, you're not allowed to advertise freely. I mean, the whole concept of this was advertise freely and let people know. You still have to go to a platform in the UK, answer questions that you are qualified, and then you can see the offering. So, we keep talking about crowdfunding in the UK doing really well. It is, but it's not ideal. And what I want to get to is you can advertise freely and get people to invest and get equity for you. But we're going to take a couple more questions here on the table. Jukka, you've done business with crowdfunding. Oh, Michael, get it run. Okay. Thank you, Michael. We're going to start with you, Jukka, because you've done business in crowdfunding both in Hong Kong, you have operations in Singapore, you have offices in UK as well as here in San Francisco, New York, but you're also background from Finland. So you're covering just about the whole globe, and you've been around for 4 or 5 years now. Tell us a little about how things are working in other countries where you've been doing business and where you see the opportunity, and how come your firm, Grow VC in Crowd Valley now, is looking more to the US as opposed to other markets where you've been before?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I think that it is not only in crowdfunding, but in many other industries that people often think that many things are better in other places. So that we have seen it also that when we talk with people here in the US, many people say that, okay, in the UK it is much better. In the UK, people say that some things are better in the US, or maybe the market is better in Asia, and so on. And I think that when we operate in Grow VC Group, we have actually 10 companies that are now operating in crowdfunding area. We have CrowdValley, that is basically the platform, and its platform is used in more than 50 countries at the moment. And we have also some marketplaces for startups, for real estate, commodities, and so on. It's very hard to say that there is one place that is the best place for the crowdfunding. There are differences, that in some places there are some benefits, that something is working very well in one place, but then there can be something else that is working better in another place. So that in that way, I think that we are still in early market, and I think that many countries have some limitations that are not so good, and some people are a little bit ahead.
Well, look, what's been happening is you see Indiegogo and Kickstarter going international. Meanwhile, equity platforms and non-equity platforms, well, specifically equity platforms abroad, like your firm, has said, okay, we've been operating abroad, but now we're going to the US because the penetration is better. There's more comfort using a credit card payment. A lot of countries in Eastern Europe won't use credit cards. There's nothing like customs. I'm born and raised in Sweden. We used to go to the post office. That's how we do it. And Germany still does that. They don't feel comfortable sending money differently. The payment system is a big issue abroad and in Europe. And we talked to the payment survivors, payment supporters over there, how they deal with it. So, I understand that you guys came to the US because you felt, you know what, we have a strong following, more clients potentially here, but it's easier to convert them to online customers. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think that there are several reasons why we want to be active also in the US, and actually, for example, CrowdValley is very significant business nowadays in the US. I think that one reason is that anyway many other countries want to follow examples from the US. And anyway, the local capital market and the funding market is very strong in the US compared to other countries. Of course, there are also differences how people are able but also willing to make transactions online. But actually that picture is more complex, because there are definitely some countries that are very conservative, for example, to pay something online by credit card. But at the same time, when we have been active also in some developing countries, even in Africa, we have done something together with World Bank, that then it's actually interesting to see that some developing countries are, for example, very advanced, for example, with mobile payments, when it's basically the only way to transfer money in some countries. And actually for one of our, we have mainly equity and lending business, but we have actually one company also in the group called Capital, that is more donation and reward crowdfunding. And when that one is now expanding to developing countries, it has been actually interesting to see that we need totally new payment models, because people have no credit cards, so that basically you must be able to pay, for example, with SMS text messages, or even to think something like to buy some scratch cards from kiosk to pay something, and that kind of things that are actually quite typical, for example, in Africa and also India and Indonesia and these kind of places, if you want to get normal people to pay something. And the mobile is coming very, very important in developing countries.
Jukka is from Finland, and me being from Sweden, I was born and raised there. I came over here 25 years ago. Everything in Finland has to be written in Swedish too, which I know by law, because we had an empire once in the 19th century, and the king decided to fight the Russians. Didn't work out too well. So everything in Finland today has to be in Swedish. So I asked for the legal opinion of why crowdfunding in Finland is allowed the way they do it, and they can actually advertise and just take money like this. But it's such a small market. But they have an exemption that moved up to 1.5 million euros, and you can just raise money without a PPM. Very little known. I think I wrote an article about it, but they're probably one of the more advanced in crowdfunding, but nobody knows about it.
May I add something? Because this is actually a good example that how countries are different, that something is very advanced in one country, but something else is not so advanced. And in Finland, yes, you can actually make equity crowdfunding up to 1.5 million. But what is the funny part is that actually you cannot make donation-based crowdfunding. And actually that's why the Finland is now suing Wikimedia because Wikipedia is basically collecting donations, and it is not allowed in Finland until you have a special permission, and if you are a foreign company, you cannot even get the permission. So that it's interesting case, and I think that it just indicates that how difficult it is to compare different countries, that it's really that somebody can be excellent in one area, but very historical in another area.
All right, we're going to move over a little quickly here to Amilcar and BankBox, and you guys are seeing a lot of activity in certain markets like Singapore, Canada, and the UK. Granted, you're just in the US, but you guys are thinking about expanding. So maybe you can give us a little more color on what's happening with your services, and maybe give a summary for everybody here what your firm really does.
Exactly, yeah. So my name is Amilcar. I run business development, marketing, and sales for BankBox. BankBox is essentially a technology layer on top of banks, and what we built is a proprietary set of APIs to handle payments and compliance for the investment portals. So naturally, we've gotten a lot of interest from the UK.
Are you from New York? You speak really fast.
Really? Yeah, actually, I lost my buddy over here, but I also started my career in Wall Street.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
So that's probably
See,
where
you
it comes
recognize
from.
the fellow.
I worked in capital markets for
There you
about
go.
14 years, and I've been an entrepreneur in the Fintech industry for about 4 now as well. So yeah, I mean, let me actually highlight, because we're not just doing payments, and some of the things that you mentioned, hit it right on the nail, but don't go so far. I forget who it was that was showing us, some of these exemptions on the state-by-state level. I think it was Chris. As an example, BankBox, if we work with a state charter bank and not a national bank, we couldn't even operate in Michigan or Wisconsin, because some of those rules are such that the money or the escrows have to be held by a bank that is registered within those states. Right, so don't go beyond the states to figure out, hey, there's a lot of hurdles to overcome. So here's a couple of examples, right, of the things that we have to really tackle before we can go abroad. Definitely the UK. I would say by the end of the year we should be live in at least one more country outside of the US. We're actively working on solving that problem. The problem is also it boils down to banking partnerships, abroad, and you know that all these banks are really slow to innovate. Right, and so can we do a programmatic escrow at Barclays in the UK? It's very likely that if you knock and you say, "Hey, I'm BankBox from Silicon Valley. Can you give us an agency relationship with Barclays?" They'll say, "Yeah. Why don't you come back? 5 years from now." So the way we're tackling this problem is Airbnb, for example, will have a lot of payments. Right, they go abroad. Who powers Airbnb? And can we leverage the same type of APIs? So without giving too much of the secret sauce away, that's the angle we're taking. However, stepping back, I said we do payments and compliance, right? So payments is just part of the equation. We're also onboarding investors and issuers and running verification against them. So in terms of anti-money laundering, OFAC, we're essentially making the portals become bulletproof against regulations, right? Can we do that abroad, right? So our service offering, it's very different when we're thinking about it when going abroad. So tackling some of the issues. If you had, for example, an issuer in the UK receiving pounds, and you have investors that are going into that issuance from the US, say Israel and Asia, let's say that the escrow was successful. Great, no problem. You would have had at least 60 days of FX translation risk, right? So the monies that came in local currency have to be translated into pounds. Now, let's say that transaction was unsuccessful. Well, who eats the FX risk? You could have made money or lost money. So what do we return? Right? That's just one question. Issuer fraud is obviously a big concern. And this is an opportunity, for example, for some of our partners like CrowdCheck, shameless plug, but so CrowdCheck is doing a lot of due diligence in the US. Can they do the same abroad, right, via APIs? And so there's a lot of questions that still need to be ironed out, even beyond just the payment flow.
Well, on that topic with the UK, Syndicate Room is another group that I wrote about. They were the first one to actually have angels of Cambridge University look at deals, and they would have one angel put in 50,000 pounds, and then everybody else would come in on crowdfunding. So there's another group as well. Maybe you should be talking to them. You know, Angels Den and the syndicate room in the UK. Well, maybe make you an introduction.
Actually, if I can highlight one more thing, sorry. We can onboard, and we have worked with cross-border platforms. So if you were in the UK or in the US, as long as you have an entity in both places, we can support you at BankBox. So if you have a Canadian crowdfunding portal and you're willing to register in the US, right, an LLC or a C Corp or S Corp, as long as we have that legal entity, we can onboard your investors and your issuers. The process is slightly different and a little bit more expensive because we're reliant on wires a lot more, and Gabby can tell you all about the number of international investors that we onboard, but we can support platforms that are cross-listed.
All right, thank you for that, Amilcar. I want to go back to Italy. We wrote and covered what happened almost 10 months ago, 11 months ago, and still there's no. Well, there's two platforms in Italy doing crowdfunding for equity today under this new law, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, there are two at the moment, and 1/3 which has received the authorization from the Council and will start operation during the month of April. So they actually started the first in January and the second in February. And last week the first deal has been closed. They had only one deal each. So we are at the very beginning of the industry. The third one in April will propose 3 deals, so we will start having more things to read at and more experience. And in September there will be other 3. So one will be generalist as the first 3, and 2 other will be one specialized in real estate and the other one in alternative energies.
No, thank you. Now, our group, we also have a private equity advisory group, and we have small investor funds, both here in the US and abroad, looking at crowdfunding platforms to invest in. And there are activity in Europe that they're looking at, specifically, Europe. That's enough, I'm not going to say where. But several groups have been looking at acquiring and investing in crowdfunding platforms in Europe. And also we've seen Simbit in Holland, that I've been working with on and off for 3 years, just raise over $1.5 million from in New York City and do a reverse entry into the US market. Simbit had a very clean, early way of getting involved. But, to the challenges has been that, the last 3 years, they raised $2.5 million in Holland, which is not very large if you look at Crowdcube, who's now up to 36 million or more, and just going really, really quick. So, it's starting to move between different firms and platforms abroad, especially in Europe. And of course, now here in the US, is going to take the lead. I mean, the UK has been a little worried about, the US is coming, the US is coming. They know that when the US starts moving, like, it's just going to take off like wildfire, and it is already, as we see it. What UK has, which is the Small Enterprise Investment Scheme, which allows them to deduct their investment in a startup, a small company, with 50% against their salary. And that's why you see so much activity over there. That means you put in $100,000, you can take $50,000 against your salary, ordinary income. So Senator Kuhn in Congress, I'm working with him to come up with the same program. He has a program that he's suggesting for us to do the same thing in the US, where you would be able to invest in a startup and deduct it against your ordinary income. Now that would be a huge push for small companies, and I would love to see that. So, we're looking to write a comparison between the UK and how successful the SCIS has been, and it started with EIS before it was a Small Enterprise Investment Scheme. And, well, there's a lot of news from the UK, and this is the reason why, because people can just say, well, you know what, I made too much money, I'm going to deduct my investment. And if you hold it for 3 years, it's tax-free, any profit. So it's quite a good deal in the UK. You've done some work there in the UK. What's happening there now?
Yeah, first of all, I would say that these tax benefits, they are really important in the UK. That if you talk with people who like to invest in startups, even with business angels, they really like to invest in UK-based startup companies that are able to utilize these tax benefits. So that in that way, I see that it is really bringing value in certain way. Of course, another aspect in Europe is that when actually some other countries have also similar tax benefits, actually it's a little bit problem for the domestic, could I say, domestic European investment market, when all investors only want to invest in the local market, they don't want to invest in other countries. So that I think that if I think generally the UK situation, crowdfunding has been very important for the startups because UK has maybe the most important venture capital market in Europe, but at the same time, compared, for example, to Silicon Valley, the venture capital companies are behaving very differently, so that they are not typically willing to take high risk in early days of the company. I have talked with many top-level venture capital firms in London, and most of them want to see, for example, at least £1 million revenue and a strong sales pipeline and that kind of things. Even they are willing to talk with startups, and you know that it takes quite a lot of work until you are able to make £1 million. So that crowdfunding has really come to fill a kind of very important gap there.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
It is very interesting, the tax exemption for dividends coming from a startup, but they might come or not, so it's a big question mark. So what the Italian government has done instead is the possibility to deduct the investment from your tax return up to 24% of the investment. This is ugly. I think it's the only country in the world where you can deduct an investment from your tax return as it was a cost.
That's interesting because one of my lawyers, he's based in Puerto Rico, and I spoke for the Venture Capital Association there. And they changed the law about 2 years ago that if you have an operation running out of Puerto Rico, which is under the protectorate of the US, and it's a C corporation, you can apply for a federal tax of 4% instead of 30%. So some of the hedge fund managers, there's also part of that law, is that if you live there for 6 months, you have no income tax, and you can avoid. So there were a couple of hedge fund managers in New York who mentioned that they were thinking about doing it, and it blew up in their face, and they had to recant. So even though we're talking about international, there are opportunities that kind of is national here that nobody knows about, because Puerto Rico decided not to do campaign on this new law because we're changing political powers about a year ago. So, I mean, if anybody wants to know more about it, you can come up to me to talk about that. It's interesting over there. Go ahead, Amilcar.
Yeah, so just real quick, in terms of the interest that we've seen from the UK, more as a data provider here, real estate and alternative lending, so peer-to-peer mechanics and real estate is really the big cluster, not so much on equity, at least the deal flow that we're coming across.
From the UK, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree that peer-to-peer lending is a really significant business in the UK, and even of course Crowdcube and Cedars, they have nice success stories, but compared to peer-to-peer lending, it is very small money.
Let me give you some numbers. I don't have the fresh numbers, but in 2012, venture capital in Europe was around $6 billion, while in the US around $25 billion. And business angel networks were doing about the same thing. A little less in the US, maybe around 20 billion, but around 4 billion in Europe. And again, look at Europe has 500 million inhabitants in 28 countries. We have 300. So, the lead in that area is over in the US. And I went to the US, with the US Commerce Department 2 years ago to talk about how do we incentivize and duplicate the programs in the US to Europe and get small businesses money. And what's working, what's not working. So they are looking to the US for leadership. Yet again, a lot of things are happening there. I know we're talking a lot about Europe and the US because I've been traveling around the world for 2 years now, interviewing everybody everywhere. I didn't spend as much time in Asia as I should, I guess, to have more info. But maybe somebody in the panel has more info, or maybe there's some questions in the public for the panel. Anybody? On another topic, doesn't have to be this topic. So,
We came across, actually, one of the early adopters that we have been supporting has now gone abroad. And so it's an interesting success story because they're going, literally, so they've proven their model here in the US, but they're effectively trying to open entities in Asia to bring Asian investors into the US. Typically, we think the opposite.
right, so they're a US-based company,
Right,
and they want to attract Asian-based investors to invest here.
correct.
Is that combined with the EB-5 immigration program, or no, not really?
No. This is just more of a one-off, as an example. We've also seen companies out of Draper Fisher, like Globester, which are essentially focused on EM markets and companies that will do social good. So, high impact, quadruple bottom line type of companies. But then the investor base will be U.S. or international. So if you think about this from an asset class perspective, you're talking, the opportunities I think are endless, and everybody knows that. But the types of asset classes and investments that we'll see down the line will be very different. Infrastructure finance, for example, is one of those areas that is very slow to innovate. You could have water salination projects. You could have, in theory, you could even eradicate some of the biggest problems we have in the world.
Yeah, if I can add, we have quite a lot of operations in Asia also. I think that what we have seen that probably Asian investors are less interested in startup companies, but for example, they are very interested in real estate investments. And also people are looking for example, companies that are not really in the startup phase, but later phase companies that are making revenue. And for example, in China, very important market has been to be able to invest companies maybe 1 or 2 years before they make IPO, because the IPO market has been very important in China, and there have been a lot of people who have been able to make money from that one, so that people are interested in that kind of cases. But I think that it's also about the culture, that it takes time that they learn, for example, about the startup opportunities. And it's always so that you must diversify your portfolio.
Well, we're going to we have one question. Brian.
I have a question about the international boundaries in investing in Europe. Alessandro, you said in the Italian model, you take all nationalities to invest. And I'm hearing that France is now developing a crowdfunding framework. So what I'm not understanding is here, each country has their own securities laws. So how is it, are you saying that Italy will allow someone from France to invest, but that company and that Italian platform is actually going into France and taking money? Do you have the platforms have to worry that they can't take money from the person in France or Finland because they have to be compliant with those laws? How is this working out? Because you're very much like Canada, you have all these jurisdictions trying to work together. So I wasn't sure what you meant by any nationality.
Okay, that is not very much clear because there is not international private law concerning finance, so there is no law about conflict of laws. So what is commonly accepted in all the European Union is that the country regulates the companies operating in that country. So Italy regulates platforms operating in Italy. France regulates platforms operating in France. But within the European Union, everybody has freedom to move and to make investments wherever he wants. So I, as an Italian, I can go to the United Kingdom and buy whatever I want, make investment, open business, etc. And I must be allowed to do so. As a matter of fact, I know that Crowdcube has problems in getting money from people abroad, from UK. So this is why they are developing a model under which they are licensing Crowdcube in several countries. And if you are Italian, you will go on Crowdcube Italy to subscribe an investment on Crowdcube UK. But this is not compulsory, and what the Italian platforms want to do, want totally avoid this kind of process, and within the European Union, they want to take the money of every single investors in the union. Instead, as far as people from outside the European Union are concerned, for now, platforms will start with a small investment. I showed you before that up to 500 euro, you're not subject to the MiFID procedures. So platforms do not need the help of a broker-dealer to take the money. And frankly speaking, most of the investment will be below the 500 euro amount. So people from China, from Australia, and so on, that will be willing to invest in an equity platform in Italy will be allowed to do so up to 500 euro. Above that amount, well, nobody is sure of what will happen, so for now they would skip.
But maybe in France they are going to have a limit that you can invest only if you speak fluent French.
Yes, probably.
All right, well, we're going to have lunch now. Thank you for listening. If you have more questions, come up.